Few people rolling in. Lindsay, how's your afternoon going?
It is snowing, so I'm very happy. I'm a contrarian to most people, I think, so pretty pumped.
It is a good day for a dusting of snow. It looks good.
Yeah, very happy to see it. How's your afternoon?
It's
Wait for
been
everyone to
good.
come in.
Yeah, no, the snow is falling. It's nice. The trees are covered in snow, starting to look like Christmas. Reminding me I got to do all my holiday shopping, so it's always a good reminder. Do you have as people are rolling in, Linz, do you have an opening reminder for people about Q&As at the end, where to put things in the chat?
Yeah, great question. So use the chat function for everyone who's jumping in. It should be in the top nav. You can pop your questions in there. Our team in the background is monitoring the chat, so they'll make sure to get the questions over to us. So we will take questions at the end. I will say, just make sure, or just to remind everybody that the chat is open. Everyone can see it as well. So just please be respectful and yeah, make sure you're kind to Aaron and is fielding our questions. Just joking. We'll take the hard ones, but
We're nice people, but you can be
they're nice
tough with
people.
questions. We're okay with
Yeah.
that. Yeah. All right, why don't we get started? We only got 30 minutes, Lynn,
Yeah.
so we'll get rolling. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. If you're calling in from Toronto, it's a nice snowy day. If you're someplace else in the country, hopefully you're getting a good dose of weather today as well. I know there's a bunch of members on the call. There's also a bunch of non-members. So we're going to start off with just a little reminder of who we are at the Canadian Health Food Association. So for those of you that don't know myself and Lindsay, my name is Aaron Skelton, and I'm the president and CEO for the Canadian Health Food Association. And Lindsay, who is joining in on this today, is our VP of Marketing and Communication. And we're really excited to sort of unveil and walk you through one of our more recent research projects. For those of you not familiar with the CHFA, we've been working in this industry, helping to support it and grow it for the last 59 years, believe it or not. We'll be celebrating 60 years as an association next year. So keep a lookout for some of the exciting things that are happening around there. We represent actually close to 1,200 member companies from coast to coast to coast. And that includes things, manufacturers, retailers, brokers, distributors, B2B businesses. Really, if you're in the natural, organic, and wellness space, we've really got a home for you here at CHFA. So we're excited to do the work that we do, and we're really excited to talk about some of the research stuff that we've been doing. So let's flip over to the next slide. So you probably know us for our great trade events. So CHFA Now, the big bookended events at the beginning and the end of the year in Vancouver and Toronto. Hopefully you started to hear some of the advocacy stuff that we work on. So obviously we really are the representation for this industry in Ottawa with sort of the political sphere of our industry. But we've also, over the last couple of years, really leaned in on education and done a significant amount of investment actually into data and research on the Canadian market. As past retailer and past supplier, Lindsay and I have both sort of seen the spectrum and really realized there was a gap in industry around research. So we've done a lot on the Canadian consumer, really to be able to support our manufacturing members, but also our retailers. We've done the ones that are up there on the screen in front of you. So around health and wellness and what the Canadian consumer is thinking. Obviously, something that's top of mind for most of us. What impact is inflation having? We know personally, but how do we take those learnings and apply it to our businesses? And then the one we're going to walk through today is around the 7 forces that the team identified that are helping to shape consumer behavior. We know heading into 2024, it's not going to be the easiest year. And we really wanted to do our part to be able to support our member businesses on how to navigate that. What does that look like? And they've done a fantastic job of doing that. So we're going to walk you through 3 of those forces today. And Lindsay's going to kick it off and let you know what the research was and why we felt it was so important.
For sure. Yeah, thanks. So for this report, we consciously decided to think bigger and broader than what's just trending in the natural, organic, and wellness industry. We really wanted to focus more on those big picture ideas or those macro forces that are directly impacting consumer behavior, values, and interests. And it's these macro inputs, whether they're social, cultural, economic, tech, environmental, that are not only going to impact the way we think about health and wellness, but also the brands that we choose to bring into our homes and the retailers that we choose to spend our dollars with. So consumers are really doubling down now on what's within their control. Things do feel kind of hairy and crazy right now, and they really are expecting more from brands that they choose to put their dollars behind, whether that's from better for you food options to supplements, wearable tech, urban agriculture. More consumers than ever are really engaged about the role that their actions are having on the broader society. So as Erin said, today we're going to walk you through 3 out of the 7 forces that we've outlined in the full report. And we're going to go through kind of what's behind that driving force and then give you some examples of how we're seeing this in the world today, but also some ideas on how you can maybe play with this in the future yourself. There's definitely a lot happening in the world today. And so we're hoping that this information really helps you to distill down what's going on in the big world and really kind of create a manageable framework that gives you some inspiration for your own product innovation, merchandising, or marketing activations. So we're going to kick it off with the first force. I'm assuming we're all ready and willing. So the first force is really about rewilding. We called it the call of the rewild. And for those of you who aren't familiar with rewilding, it's really about the practice of letting nature take control and take care of its oneself, like really thinking about regeneration and healing. And you've likely started to see this take shape in your own neighborhoods. Erin, I think you actually are a shining example of this with your front lawn. I think you actually don't have grass, do you? You have something that promotes pollination.
We fully leaned into it, so our lawn is mostly strawberry at this point, and I felt very validated by this force. So thank you.
Yes, no, you're right on trend. But it's really taking a step away from that manicured lawns. And again, people, you might have seen this in your communities. Like I said, the pollinator gardens, but leave the leaves, no mow May. Really letting nature kind of regenerate itself and repair damaged ecosystems that restore degraded landscapes and really help build that wilder biodiverse habitat. So some great examples that we are seeing in market today. An OG beauty brand, Lush, they have taken a step away from being kind of a generalist sustainability strategy, and they're really looking to contribute into healthy, functioning living ecosystems. And they're doing that through their ingredients. They've picked, I think it's about 6 hero ingredients. And these ingredients really consider biodiversity, bird migration, as well as the people in the communities where they're harvesting and restoring these ingredients from. And they've created a really beautiful campaign called Rewild Your Routine that really does a lot to educate and inspire their consumers to acknowledge the impact that these ingredients are having in rebuilding the ecosystem. Another really great example, and I think this is a cool one for any retailers on the call, is the concept of bringing nature into your store. I think probably a lot of us on the call are really familiar with the idea of how nature can be really beneficial for your mental health. And that's exactly what this store in London's Shepherd Bush area is doing. It's an ongoing art project. And like I said, they're really looking to bring the outside in and create that sense of wild that gives their consumers a really positive outlook as they shop. So it's not just, again, if you don't have a product per se, you can really kind of create that wild or that rewilding imagery through your store or even through your brand packaging. So let's take a quick look at how this could play out in the future and some really exciting ideas. So I think there's 3 areas that really I find quite inspiring. So the first is around health benefits. And I think taking this concept of letting nature run its course and do its own thing through your own body as well. And we're really seeing this term pop up in skincare specifically as it relates to the skin microbiome. And just to paint a little picture, on TikTok, the hashtag skin barrier had around 350 million uses. That's jumped within a year to 2.9 billion. And I'm actually sure it's grown quite substantially since I pulled that stat. The pandemic really kind of forced us to let go of things that weren't in our control, things like beauty treatments, hair appointments. And I think a lot of us probably lamented that at first, but I think over the long time, we've seen how less is more has really helped improve the health of, our skin and our hair and things like that. So I think as we go into the future, consumers are really going to be looking for gentler and kinder products. And, we've even started to see third-party certifications in Europe. There's one called My Microbiome that really helps consumers navigate and educate and choose products that support and protect their microbiome. The second area is around product storytelling. And I really, obviously kind of painted a picture with Lush and what they're doing. But I think brands and retailers can also think about employee and consumer campaigns and initiatives that really encourage those in their core demographic or their core audience to make small changes and how those can have a big difference through their actions, through give back initiatives, through ingredient selection. So I think there's really a lot you can do there, especially within your local community where you can really see the impacts. And then the last is around brand commitments. And we've already started to see this play out in ESG, but I think it's really interesting to think about how you can set commitments around biodiversity. And this could be through things like habitat protection, no exploitation, or even the use of raw materials or packaging changes that take some of the burden off the environment. So those are three kind of areas where I really see the future taking hold.
Yeah, I think those are great, Lindsay. I mean, it's amazing to see the transition. Not that we weren't authentic before, but this massive shift to authenticity. And with that comes this realization that like more polished is not always better. And consumers are
Yes.
really starting to feel that drawback to like, give me something that feels authentic, feels natural.
Yeah.
There's many brands out there that can tap into that. And I think your point was well made that it's yes, there's a product focus to it, but even think how you express whatever product or service you've got. How do you market that? How do you set that up as or organizational sort of aspect to what you do? And those permeate through, and consumers will pick up on those things. But that step away from polished and more controlled is a really interesting force for sure.
But I mean, I always think about it through the marketing lens, but you're right. Like even how people push back against retouching photos now, or
Yes.
not being so perfect with their social media, like having a bit of that authenticity and that rewilding concept come through there is definitely something for people to consider.
I gotta go take down my polished photos. Okay, good,
Yeah.
good, good remember. Good thing to remember. Okay, moving on to our second force. This one we've coined warming signs. So a little personal story here. My son, my oldest, loves this slide because he loves the picture of the Earth. He's like, how did they draw such a beautiful Earth? So then spurred on conversations about what is the Earth and what does Planet B have to do with it. But so this force is really around. The rise of the everyday consumer into this idea of an activist, right? So businesses are now not expected to just take a stance to combat the impacts, but also to play a role in restoring it. And I know when the team and I were working through this, we sort of made this comment at one point that it's no longer just about minimizing your environmental footprint. People are actually expecting you to go back and fill in the footprints of others. So you can offset some of the things that you're doing, but what are you doing to offset some of the things that may have been done before? We're now seeing the rise of a new type of consumer, and this is really an everyday activist. And they recognize that consistent day-to-day actions, including what they buy, who they buy it from, are really compounded over time. So they're starting to see themselves as, yes, maybe I won't be joining Sierra Club or Greenpeace and chaining myself to a boat or a tree. But I do think that consumers are starting to appreciate that those little choices that they make every single day start to add up. And they're looking to the brands and the companies that they buy from to look at what those changes are and what those impacts are. So some of the brands that are doing this today that we can look to for a little bit of inspiration. So two companies that we really highlighted. I don't know if there's any sort of sneakerheads out there, but I'm sure some of them have heard of the company Allbirds. I know this is one of the things that Lindsay champions is sort of the fashion industry and its impact on waste and the environment. And we're really seeing the fashion industry influence and really show an obligation towards climate change through initiatives, right? So there are things like large clothing companies like Patagonia, something we're probably all familiar with, but it does trickle down into up and coming brands like Allbirds. So they've really align on their desire to mobilize the masses, right? So how do you get a lot of people behind this and really use their design and something that's unique to the fashion industry, really an open source problem solving model. So one of the things that they've done recently that I think really speaks to this force, they've launched the first ever net zero shoe. So this is something that debuted alongside not just the shoe, but a playbook to other manufacturers on how they could do something similar. So again, this is not a company who's trying to keep it proprietary. They're saying, hey, we've discovered a way to make a shoe with a zero carbon footprint. We think everyone else should do this as well, and we're willing to make this available to anyone else. The other one on the slide is a really cool company called Lomi. And ever since the team highlighted this one to me, I feel like I've seen these guys everywhere. So there's definitely a lot of buzz around them. But their claim to fame is really this sort of countertop appliance that acts as an in-house sort of composter. Now, compared to throwing your waste away in a landfill, using Lomi actually reduces your carbon footprint by 127%. So this is a significant step that consumers can make. Now, it's a countertop sort of composting technology company, but it's really there to fight food waste by transforming these food scraps into a nutrient-rich organic matter that you can use on your lawn if you're trying to keep your strawberries fertilized, like I do, or even houseplants in the house, like I know Lindsay's got dozens of. So it's again another company that's really striking a chord with people on their sort of personal activists mentality around what's happening to the environment today. Now, how do you take some of these learnings and apply it to your own brands? What are the things that you can utilize? So instead of better for you brands and the associated products, we're now seeing that people are seeking a better for all of us, right? So a shift from for you to all of us, and they're really looking to measure the impact on people, the planet, and we can't ignore the fact that price and profitability also come into it. So there's really a move to a more sustainable and restorative mentality. And I think that's something you can think your way through on how it could affect your brands. You also want to explore and activate progressive packaging solutions, right? So it is about the product, but it's also the packaging, how you deliver it, and make sure that you've got a really consistent and fulsome ESG mandate. You could also, if you're a retailer or if your brand's selling into retail, you can consider the impact of some of the commercial retail space. Are there progressive steps being taken? Are you retrofitting? Are you relocating to something that has a reduced environmental impact? As you look to roll out into new retail partners, do they have a really substantiated ESG commitment that you can align with your own? These are all things that could help the positioning of your product and your organization to consumers. And then last but definitely not least, and this is one I had a conversation with at a judging panel earlier this week, is are there partners that you can work with to further your mandates and maybe potentially offset some of the carbon footprint that you can't avoid today? The only caution that we found, and I know that's something we've done ourselves, is really, take the time to really research these prospective companies. As often there's things where they can implement, but they're not able to track. There's no maintenance of some of the tree planting, and so the trees don't survive. And so you really want to take the time to vet these partners and make sure that they're walking the talk. As many of you might know who have engaged in our shows, we've partnered with Veritree, and that's one of the reasons that we went into this partnership with them, is they really can back up the work they do and they can verify it, hence the name of Veritree. And we found a lot of success with working with those guys. So if you can pull in a few of these things and look through your whole value chain within your organization, there's often many opportunities where you can sort of speak to that emerging activist in the consumers today.
And I would say as well, a lot of positive feedback from having a partnership like that. Trade shows, they do have waste, they do come with an environmental footprint. So, having that partner and doing the work to offset some of that was met with a lot of love, I think, from the surveys we did after the show. So
Yeah,
great partners.
Yeah, and Lindsay, one thing I know, I'll just mention before we get to our last one, that really came up when we were doing some of the research on this, like the example of Patagonia. Everyone knows Patagonia. They basically become a trust that's been gifted back to Mother Earth. Fantastic story if you don't know it. But one of the things they did really early is they pulled back the curtain and they showed where they were good and where they weren't good. So it's not about being perfect at this point. It's about showing consumers that you're paying attention and that you're doing the work where you can, and you've identified the issues where you don't have a solution yet. You're still honest about the fact that you don't have a solution. So I think the other element in there is transparency, even if it's not a good story, is important while you work on some of the improvements that you want to make as well.
Yeah, and I think for everyone about to hear the final trend, I think that's one of the things that comes through in the next trend around diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is something that's really important to us at CHFA, and I think also just very important on a broader scale. But just coming to that point of that transparency, you see that through all of these different trends. People are so much more interested in hearing where you are now and where you're trying to get to than pretending to be something you're not. And very much so in this one, you'll hear me hark on this like a couple of times as we go through it. But this last course that we're going to talk about, like I said, is all around the importance of DE&I efforts. And there definitely is a level of accountability required by brands now to really demonstrate the lived experience of their values and going beyond that idea of performative allyship into a real, true, authentic ally. Doing this work is hard. It is uncomfortable sometimes, but it really is taking you beyond virtue signaling and savior complex mentalities, and just really, putting your efforts in a really transparent and authentic way. And like I said, going beyond that surface level. So some areas that we're seeing this play out, I think, especially when it comes to kind of breaking down traditional norms, pop culture is always a leading indicator. And we've got Rihanna, the queen, up there on the screen performing Pregnant at the Super Bowl, which is definitely something I know I haven't really ever seen before in my lifetime. I think it's definitely a first. But I think where is really interesting about this particular force is this industry has always been a leader, I would say, in this area. You can see Tara Bosch up there, an amazing female founder. And again, we've always really championed female founders. I know we've had Erica Rankin from Brodo on our Founders Forum, if any of you have joined us at our show, an incredible business leader. Margaret Coons is another one for Nuts for Cheese. These are women who are creating really unique brands and products. They're running their businesses, they're leading fundraising, and they're also the face of the company. And I know a lot of other women in the industry and beyond find that really, really inspiring and can aspire to get there themselves. I think also as an industry, we were really early adopters to B Corp certification. So definitely there's a planet and a profit component to there, but there is also that people component. And I was part of a company that did get their B Corp certification and, making sure that we hit diversity, inclusion, and equity targets a very long time ago. And that was really important as part of that certification. And last but not least, I think this is also an industry that's really has its roots in traditional medicines and healing modalities. And again, we have an opportunity to really kind of double down and be leaders and make sure that those stories, those voices, those traditional medicines, they're brought more to the forefront and in a really positive light. So the areas that we can see this playing out in the future. A couple different areas. I feel like there's lots of ways you can take this, but an area that I thought was really exciting. We a few months ago, before CHFA Now Toronto, we had a conversation with our friends at Hive Naturals and had really looked about expanding your traditional promo periods beyond Christmas. I know I live in a really multicultural neighborhood. Eid is much bigger here than Christmas. So again, if it fits with your brand, really thinking, how do Canadians celebrate now throughout the years? Another really interesting point of the conversation with our friends at Hive was around just storytelling at store level. So showcasing brands that are, have BIPOC leaders or female founded and giving a little bit of color and story about the background of those brands. And they're really seeing that have a lot of success at retail. A second area is to find a way that fits to give back. A really good example of this in our industry is Nature's Path Love Crunch. They recently have deepened their commitments to inclusion by donating to the It Gets Better project, which is a not-for-profit on a mission to uplift, empower, and connect US LGBTQ youth around the globe. So again, fits with their brand. It was something they had a lot of passion around, and I think it was a really great partnership to bring that to the forefront. And last but not least, just think about your inclusion through product formulation. And this can take many different forms depending on the products you have. Definitely incorporating diversity of flavors, ingredients, modalities, but really think about how Canada is changing and our demographics are shifting. And definitely, I've seen this over my life. I know I'm not that young anymore, but the Canada we know is very different now. So really reflecting that back in your brand and the products you bring to market. Okay, we've got
That was a
6 minutes
teaser.
for that was a
That was
teaser.
just a
We've got
teaser.
6 minutes for questions. We'll take them, but I do want to say, we live in a time of numerous conflicts, relentless climate change disasters. The cost of living is going through the roof, and social media is really propelling us to witness this firsthand. And I think that really does have an impact. And again, these trends, they might not feel, outwardly connected to the now industry, but they are having an impact on your consumer. And consumers are really, like I said, looking to connect with brands, connect with retailers that share their values. So the goal of this report was really to provide insight into how businesses can contribute to making a more positive change, both in the broader world and in the eyes of your consumers. So we went through 3 here, fast and furious. We're happy to take some questions. If you do want to get a little bit more color to some of the ones we went through today, you can download our sample report, which goes, like I said, into a little bit more depth of these 3 trends. But if you are a CHFA member, which I feel like everyone wants to be on this call, perhaps, you can get access to the full 7 forces that we cover for 2024. It's an awesome report. The team did an amazing job going through media, social listening, digging into what's really impacting consumer mindsets and how that's going to shake out in 2024 and beyond. So
Wonderful.
we did it. Is there any questions? I don't even know. I don't even think there's, let's see. Oh,
We
I think I
covered the
answered.
bases so well.
Yeah, I did. I got a comment and we answered one of the questions already. So I will also say we're always here for questions. We love questions. We love talking about consumer reports. So download the sample report, read it, take it in, and then definitely email our team. You can always find us at info@chfa.ca. We're happy to connect you with the right person on the team to answer the question, but maybe everyone just wants to go enjoy the snowy day and read.
Maybe.
Maybe.
All right. Well, maybe everyone's pulling out their phone to scan the QR code, and those that aren't
Yes.
members are eagerly logging into chfa.ca to fill out their membership. So if there's no questions, and maybe there's not today, I think to Lindsay's point, the team is always here to answer questions. I think this report, there's a lot in there. It's less that immediate sort of what is the consumer that's already buying your product. This is more big picture. And I think if you take the time to digest it and reflect on how it impacts your business, there's something in there for everybody. And after you do that, if you have a few questions you want to unpack, you know where to find us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Although we have a hand.
We have a hand,
a
but I don't know
emoji.
if, Heather, I don't know if we can unmute you. But we don't typically, but it's a small enough
I
group.
can't.
Can you type your question, Heather? We'll take it. Let's see. Oh, I think, hold on. No, we can't unmute you. The way we're set up, unfortunately. I can disable your mic, but the muting has already disabled it, so.
Lindsay, I think she could be able to unmute herself now.
Oh, perfect. Thanks,
If
Randy.
you're able to, Heather.
Oh, we're gonna get a typed question.
We're
That'll
gonna
work
get
too.
We should have the music for when people have to type the question, just like interlude.
And we need
Yeah.
the waiting,
The waiting,
hold
yeah.
music.
Yeah. Will this be available as a replay? It sure will. Yes, we can. That's an easy question. I believe we'll have the email out tomorrow with the full recording, as well as again that link to the sample report. So yes, you can definitely.
Great question.
we prefer non-skill testing questions at this point of the day, so thank you. Okay, right. So we're almost at time. So again, thank you everyone for taking time out of your day. We really appreciate it. We love doing reports like this. Take it in. We hope you enjoy. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Aaron.